Hey there, it's time for the show, the Tatiana Show, where you make friends and talk life and crypto. This episode of the Tatiana Show is brought to you by Vaultoro. Vaultoro is a gold hedging solution for the crypto community. One of the challenges of investing in cryptocurrencies is dealing with volatility. Keeping a diversified portfolio is a key to healthy returns. I keep about 10% of my crypto assets in gold using Vaultoro. Vaultoro allows me to open a gold wallet in seconds where I can easily trade with cryptos and gold. What I like about using Vaultoro instead of Tether is that the gold in my Vaultoro wallet is insured, audited, vaulted in Switzerland, and unlike fiat money, gold has increased in value for the last 20 years. Visit vaultoro.gold/Tatiana today and get zero trading fees for the first 3 months. That is vault, like a gold vault, and oro, which is Spanish for gold. Vaultoro, ole! I want to talk about Celsius Network. They're doing a really cool thing, trying to revolutionize the way we think about financial services. Basically, they're offering their users up to 10% annual interest on their crypto deposits. And there's no secret to how they're doing it. That 10% comes from them sharing 80% of their profits, rather than the minuscule percentage the banks share. Celsius is giving our users $10 in BTC when they make a deposit of $200 or more in crypto or stablecoins when they use promo code Tatiana. Go to Celsius.network. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tatiana Show. Today's segment, we will be talking to Matthew Mezinskis. He has a Polish last name, but I couldn't pronounce it, so you're getting the Americanized version. But he's actually Latvian, and he's a crypto friend that I made somewhere along my many travels around the world, also a liberty lover, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about Riga, his podcast, his involvement in the crypto space, and a few other things. So thank you so much, Matt, for joining us on the show today.
Hey, Tatiana. Thanks a lot for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So tell me, where and when did you first find out about Bitcoin? And was it politically driven? Was there a political backstory to that?
Yeah, it was, I guess, around 2011, quite early when I first heard about it. But I think like most people on the journey, you have your fits and starts with it. For I guess not everybody. You know, some people say it clicked with them immediately. For me, it was not immediate. You know, you have feelings that it's a scam and it's never going to work. And it's just a quick way to lose some money. So it took me a while, but I was definitely following it from 2011, 2012. I think probably from 2013, especially when as most people, when the price starts to move, start to follow it more. And then, just down the rabbit hole, like most people, doing a lot of reading, educating myself. And then finally, the start of 2017, I figured I wanted to get out and proclaim the good word a bit more. So that's when we started the podcast, brought in my buddy, Fernando Ulrich, who's a fellow Austrian I met actually over in Europe. He was studying under Jesus Huerta de Soto, who was an Austrian economist, very notable Austrian economist in Spain and Europe. I met him at a conference. It was actually a Mises conference about 10 years ago. And yeah, not really politically motivated. Definitely we can talk all about the good and the bad and the ugly about libertarianism as much as you want, but definitely I love Bitcoin for, I think, a lot of the same reasons that most people, but one of the reasons is certainly you don't necessarily even have to worry about politics as much. Bitcoin's a bit different that way. So it's, there's a few thoughts there.
It solves a lot of the problems of politics without actually having to engage in politics. So I think that's one of the best things that I found transitioning. I mean, I still do a lot of political stuff, but I definitely find crypto to be a little bit more fulfilling and a little bit more of a bridge builder. I think sometimes political labels can turn people off. Now, where did you grow up? Because now you're in Latvia. Where were you before that?
So I grew up in Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio. I don't know if you want to say normal, but it's a fairly Midwestern, normal place, middle of America. Lived there my whole life. Studied abroad in college. I went to the University of Cincinnati, but after college, I basically knew that I wanted to change, wanted to see the world a bit. And my father is of Latvian descent. My mother is not, but so basically half of my family, cousins, second cousins, most all of them still live in Latvia. So that was an easy spot to sort of plant roots. Wasn't necessarily planning on staying for as long as I have, but that was 13 years ago. So it's been quite a while now. And I guess, you're Polish American, right? So you went to the whole Sunday school Polish. I think I remember talking to you about this.
Yeah, Saturday mornings during prime cartoon time, I had to go to Polish school. I assure you, it really gave me a great appreciation for Poland. I mean, no, Polish school is punishment, but I have a great appreciation for Poland nonetheless. And I'm curious, what is the history like in Latvia? Because, Russia has been kind of bullying everybody around in that region. And, Bitcoin has taken hold a little bit in that community. I find that it takes hold in Poland because of that love of freedom. How has the Latvian history culminated in today's economy? And has it been as improved as, for example, Estonia with its lax regulations or free regulations, I guess?
Yeah, Estonia takes a lot of the good press, I think, from former Soviet countries, Eastern Europe, and perhaps rightfully so. They've definitely done it the right way, opened up a lot of avenues for just free markets and liberal markets, and they're very connected. It's a digital economy. Latvia a bit less. I think Lithuania probably a bit less. Poland, I believe, is in the same vein as these countries. Like they're definitely all similar in that they were behind. Almost 30 years ago when the Berlin Wall fell. I guess exactly 30 years ago, right? They were behind, and then they needed to catch up, liberalize their economies. And these economies, specifically, if we're talking former Soviet, so Poland, though they were in the Soviet orbit, they weren't, had at least still their own country, technically. The Baltics were incorporated in the Soviet Union, and as Ukraine, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, these countries. So anyway, I think the Baltics have probably made a name for themselves in Eastern Europe as being like the most progressive, liberal in the classical liberal sense, like free market countries that were in the former Soviet Union. And whether that was because they were free before World War II, had independent constitutions to fall back on, I'm not sure, but definitely they've made great strides. People work hard here. Very, very, you come here and, you were just in Riga, you can go to any bar and feel like you're, anywhere in Western Europe, very, very developed. So that's all good. But yeah, definitely on the flip side, everything that's happened in Ukraine in the last 5 years, since 2014, since literally the Winter Olympics that were in Sochi. I think it was the second week of the Olympics when Putin rolled into to Crimea, and and Ukraine, Eastern Ukraine was at war. All of those things are very much on the radar of these people. They're very much unnerved by aggression, I guess, from Putin and from Russia. But at the same time, it's hard because, I think about how a lot of libertarians in the US, like the common trope there is like, well, we need to stop our, foreign meddling and, get out of NATO and do these things. So this is the one hard thing for me as like a libertarian to sort of like, grapple with. And there's no easy answer. I mean, there's, it's like borders, right? There's good arguments on both sides about, what, at least in the short term, like what we can do. But, these are small countries. They have, their military, they have military parades every year, which is this old like Soviet thing. It's sort of funny that they do it. And like, you just see like one tank roll down the road and people wave some flags. It's very strange. But these are extremely small countries, like basically no military, and they basically rely on NATO and Western Europe and the US to keep them, and Canada to keep them sort of protected. But then on the other side, this is absolutely like a Ron Paul libertarian thing to say, we shouldn't aggress, we shouldn't cause problems and foreign meddling and whatnot. So the Baltics are an interesting case where like they clearly don't want to be part of something that they've been incorporated in the past, the big bear Russian. And I don't even, when I say Russian, I want to be careful too, because I have a lot of Russian friends. It's not about Russian people. It's about a Russian empire.
The state, of course.
State.
Sure.
It's about the state. It's not at all about Russian people, but that's an important point as well to make. But that's something that I think U.S. libertarians just don't think about or don't really want any part of. It's a common thing. It's like you want to get the U.S. out of meddling abroad. But I don't know, at least here in Eastern Europe, these countries, Poland included, Romania, Bulgaria, they're certainly looking towards the West for some sort of protection. But I don't know. There's not an easy answer there. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, I'm not so sure. I think it's complicated overall. I think the the US meddling isn't a good thing. But yeah, if you've got a bully like Russia going around, especially in that region, I think people should be concerned. I don't know. I mean, how do you untangle that? I would say that withdrawal overall would be the best plan, just like as a neutral, go to. But who knows? I mean, yeah, sometimes you need somebody else to come in and intervene. Look at what's happening in China right now. There was just this crazy report of all these different people, and they're all in these prisons and they can't get out, and there's all this political pressure going on. And I don't know. I mean, who's gonna stop that if you're not a big force? But I don't think that any of the world superpowers are particularly, one is a good guy and one is a bad guy. I guess the US is better than others, but is it? I mean, the US wages more war than everybody else in a lot of ways, and they support more wars. So I don't know if that's a good thing either.
Yeah,
I think we should default to Ron Paul.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I mean, I've met Ron Paul once. I'm a huge fan, and it's he's definitely one of my political heroes, one of the few. So like I'm definitely with you. It's something that I would say that a lot of classical liberals, libertarian, US oriented people don't think about. And I think classical liberals in Europe think about it a bit more. But again, this just comes back to more deep state stuff that we can't solve anyway, like just nukes and big arms and big government, like just things that we can't
nonetheless
solve.
I enjoyed myself in Riga. I thought it seemed lovely. It was very modern. The people were great. The food was particularly excellent. And it was an inexpensive place to visit, which was cool. Mm-hmm. But you were doing a talk there. What did you talk about? So for people that don't know about the conference, it was the Baltic Honey Badger Conference held in Riga. I think this was the third year. And I was lucky enough to be singing there. I did a little talking about Tatiana Coin and Token FM and also free raw stuff. But Matt, you also gave a presentation. So what did you talk about there?
Yeah, well, before I get into that, definitely great work on your presentation. Really enjoyed it. And obviously done a Herculean effort over the years to raise awareness for Ross. And I remember, I think it was in one of the Anarchapulcos in Mexico. I actually met you and Lynn I don't know if that's where I met you, but definitely met Lynn there. We were sitting having breakfast. It was interesting to speak to her, and obviously tragic in many ways too. So it was really great what you did there and what you continue to do. So definitely wanted to say that. My presentation was on Bitcoin as base money. What that basically is an idea that Fernando and I have been promoting on our little corner of the Bitcoin space for a couple of years now. We haven't necessarily popularized it because some of these economic things can just be so boring, and I don't think people really care about it anyway. But a lot of times in the Twitter sphere, the crypto sphere, people try to compare Bitcoin to something else, right? They kind of try to compare it to some US dollar money supply or some, I don't know, euro money supply. And they use different things. They use checking accounts, savings accounts, talk about credit cards, talk about a lot of different things. We don't have to probably get into the technical details of what those supplies are. But the main point of talking about Bitcoin as base money is just to recognize that in economics, when we look at prior monies, current monies, government monies, there actually is a name for the money supply that compares with Bitcoin's eventual 21 million coin supply, and that is called the monetary base. So it's a very economic term, but just to tell you briefly what it is in sort of current fiat government terms, it's everything that you would think about, like as far as what's in your wallet, what you know. So every paper note, every coin is part of the monetary base. Everything that you hold in your wallet, dollars, euros, yen, wherever you are, that's part of the monetary base supply. But then there's also another very important part, and that's the banks. All the banks account with the central bank. So you think about, we have accounts with banks, most of us still today for now. We have accounts with banks, and also every bank has an account with their central bank. So that account, it's called the master account or the reserve account, that is also included in the monetary base. So it's actually two things. One is physical, like physical money, and the other is digital, like or ledger entry, which is what the the other half, not the other half. It's actually about 65% today of the balance. And that's the monetary base. So I don't know how technically you want to get into it, but basically the idea was just to explain it, describe some of the characteristics. We can link to the presentation, I'm sure, in the show notes. But, went through a lot of the characteristics of what makes something a base money. Gold and silver was base money in the past. Government fiat money is today. And again, it's a very specific supply we're referring to. And then just to put a dollar term on it, we've calculated it's roughly, it's a little bit under right now, but in dollar terms, it's roughly $20 trillion. So roughly 100 and some times the monetary, the market cap of Bitcoin. 104 times as of last quarter. It's a little bit more because Bitcoin's fallen in market cap. But if you think basically Bitcoin's market cap right now is something, I think, a little under 150 billion. The monetary base is about $20 trillion. So that's just sort of a nice little fun comparison, I guess, to make of possibly where Bitcoin could go. I'm not saying it would even stop there because there's a lot of other cool things about what Bitcoin can do. Lightning Network, so on and so forth, but that's what it compares to. And then again, if you want to think about the other things that people erroneously compare Bitcoin to, like credit cards, checking accounts, savings accounts, all of those things, those can act like money, but they're actually they are money. Definitely in the system, we call them money. Colloquially, they're money. But what they're bank claims as well. So they're actually just IOUs from the bank, they're investments in the bank's balance sheet, so on and so forth. All of those accounts, if you add up all the savings accounts, checking accounts, credit cards, so on and so forth, that's probably well over 100 trillion. So that's a lot of money. Some people think Bitcoin could go to there. Maybe it will. But economically, Bitcoin's not like that. Bitcoin has no counterparty. It's not a bank. It's not a checking account. It's not a credit card. So every time someone compares Bitcoin to a credit card, they're not as fast as credit cards, so on and so forth. We're trying to reference economically that, that's something different. That's not part of the monetary base. Monetary base is a very specific thing. It moves slower. It's different. And that's what Bitcoin is. So it's about 20 trillion is the size of the monetary base today. I went on a long-winded tangents there. Hopefully some of that was clear.
No, I think I follow. So it'd be safe to say that you're bullish on Bitcoin. Are there any other projects that you're into?
No, I mean, mostly Bitcoin, I'd say.
Is it because of your love of economics? Like, is it from the economics perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's a big part of it. I'm definitely not opposed to other projects trying, as obviously in the crypto world, we have the Bitcoin maximalists versus, I guess, non-Bitcoin maximalists, or all these other terms, shitcoin minimalists, so on and so forth. I'm not, I try to keep my free market bent there. I mean, I'm not opposed to other projects trying, but it just seems that, in money, if we're looking at sound money, if you're looking at something that even past money, we haven't had that many, gold, silver, copper, or bronze alloys at some times. There's just not that many. So it seems that Bitcoin is primed to be, this new base money in the digital age. And that's also not to say, though, that like other projects couldn't, I don't know, survive as doing other things like asset registries or other things. But as far as money, I don't know. I think Bitcoin will be hard to beat.
This episode of The Tatiana Show has been brought to you by eToro.com. You can trade in a wide range of assets, connect with the crypto community, and automatically copy top-performing portfolios at eToro.com. Quite simply, they have the top currencies, smart tools, low fees, social trading, all in one simple app. Connect with over 11 million eToro traders around the world using social feeds. eToro makes powerful trading tools easy. Get started in minutes right now at eToro.com. That's ETORO.com. So I actually have another question for you. What do you know about Polish gold? You said you had some sort of an anecdotal historical perspective, because I was admitting my lack of, I don't know, I'm not really great with history, Polish history, whatever. And my mom is always yelling at me for it. But you said that you have some kind of a neat little story. So would you mind telling us?
Sure. I actually told this story on Peter McCormick's podcast not too long ago, but it was in the context of other things as well. So we'll try to keep it more to Eastern Europe and Poland. But I was thinking about this on his show, and then just since you asked me, might as well tell it here. So it goes back to sort of the arguments about the security of money, right? So you have the security of money today is secured through complex levels of bureaucracy in the state and everything else that we know and mostly hate as classical liberals. It's very difficult to access it, so on and so forth. And the monetary base is, as I mentioned, like, completely monopolized by the state. Only the state can print money. Only the state can regulate and tell banks how much base money they can hold. So that's an important point. And that's maybe relatively more secure actually than gold, maybe, but certainly economically not that good because they can inflate the currency at will. So that brings us back to gold and silver, which were base monies before the current fiat world. And silver was more distant than gold. Gold was more rose to prominence in the gold standard in the second half of the 19th century and the start of the 20th century. Sort of ended at World War I. Mostly gold standards or silver standards or any metallic standards end or take a pause during war, because governments know that they just can't hold the peg of a currency, so they have to go off the currency.
All the more reason not to wage war, but continue.
Exactly. And so they did try to get back on. Britain had a lot of problems getting back on because it inflated the currency so much. A lot of the governments in Europe fell off the gold standard in the 20s and the 30s. It's debatable whether they could have gotten back on, but one person that clearly put sort of the nail in the coffin of the gold standard in Europe and in perhaps even the world, many people might not think about, is Adolf Hitler. So Hitler actually, when he was arming up Germany and centralizing power in Germany and doing all the things we don't like him for in Germany in the 30s, that was costing a lot. He was confiscating a lot of gold and taking a lot of gold from other countries. And he started in Austria. When they went into Austria in the late 30s, the first thing they did, literally, Act 1 in Austria was take the gold. Then they went in Czechoslovakia. They took the gold. That was the first thing they did. And then Poland. So the Nazi invasion of Poland, which was September of 1939, that is recognized as basically the start of World War II. And Poland this goes back to even the same things we're talking about before on the podcast about, sort of countries coming to one another's aid, which is an unfortunate thing to have to rely on. But the only country that was sort of backing Poland at the time was Britain. And they weren't really doing much. Poland fell in a month to the Nazis in September of 1939.
They were maniacs. They were crazy. They mowed over Poland, and Poland was the only place that really fought them back. But they leveled the whole entire country. I mean, it was wild. If you look at pictures of what devastation was left in the Germans' wake, it was really intense. I mean, they went really hard after Poland.
Yeah, I mean, the Germans were that was pretty much the very beginning of German annexation, the Lebensraum, as Hitler liked to call it, the living room of Eastern Europe that would become, the vacation home space of Germany. Literally, that was what it was referred to. I'm not being facetious there, but they were fresh. I mean, that was the start. The Nazis had been arming for a whole decade prior. They had been arming up the country, spending a lot of money. They needed money. They actually didn't have much gold at the time. They needed more gold. And the first thing they did, as I said, in Austria and Czechoslovakia was take the gold. And then they went after Poland's gold. The interesting thing is Poland was prepared for this because they had seen what happened in Austria and Czechoslovakia. And they got all of their gold. This was something, it was like 100, it was like a little less than 100 tons of gold at the time. And just to maybe put that even in dollar terms at the time, just give me 1 second while I do some quick math. It doesn't seem like a lot now because of inflation, but it was, hundreds of millions of dollars at the time. But anyway, 100 tons of gold, just to give you maybe perspective there with that number. A country like France would maybe have 2,000 tons of gold. But they went right after it. And Poland was prepared. They put all of the gold from all, it was in different central bank branches or bank branches around the country. They put all of it on buses, unmarked buses. And literally during that month that Poland fell, like almost miraculously, they got the gold out of Poland by bus. It went down south through like Romania, parts of Ukraine, which were Romania at the time. And they went over to the Black Sea. So if people are listening to this, it'd be interesting to take a look at the map. So they went, I don't know, thousands of kilometers south of Poland down to the Black Sea. And then in the Black Sea, they got a captain who was waiting for them. I think it was a British captain, a British ship to take. They loaded the gold onto this ship from unmarked buses. Like, it was just amazing. Like, only a little bit got confiscated in Romania, but most of it made it onto the ship. And then they went south. This is, again, like literally the first month, the exact same time that the Nazis are taking over Poland. They got it onto the ship. They go south to Istanbul on the Black Sea. Now they're in Istanbul in port, and the Nazis have figured it out by now, and they're waiting for them on the other side of the Bosphorus in Istanbul. They're waiting for them. So they figure out, somehow they talk to Turkey was relatively neutral actually during World War II. Somehow they got, convinced the local authorities there to let them take the gold off the boat, put it onto a train. Someone from the Bank of Poland stayed with them. And this is an interesting thing to talk about, the logistics of all this, which I'll conclude in a second. But got it on a train, drove the gold all the way through Turkey, south to Lebanon. They went down to Lebanon. I don't know how many days, weeks this took. They get to Lebanon, where a French warship was waiting for them. They got the gold on a French warship. The French warship then, on the south of the Mediterranean, went back to France, and they got it to France. Now, France wasn't safe either. Like I said, they had 2,000 tons of gold in France. Poland had, less than 100. Like the next year, Germany was invading France, so you needed to get the gold out of there. In the midst of all that, the Polish authorities are trying to work it out, and all the gold now is starting to move out of Europe, like out of Norway, out of Belgium, out of Holland, out of France, and out of the UK. Most of Europe didn't think that the gold was safe to even keep in the UK, so most of Europe shipped it to the US, including Poland. But on the way, because again, this is just logistics, who's going to help you ship it? What are you going to do? The Poles were sort of at the behest of what the French authorities were going to do. They went first to Africa, northern Africa. They ported it there. And then finally, this was, I don't know, I can't remember the exact time during the war where this was. They finally got the gold out of northern Africa and then to the US, where it remained until the fall of the Berlin Wall. And there were other, like France was always interesting because a lot of the countries in Europe eventually sent their gold to the US for safekeeping from Hitler, but France sort of didn't trust the US either. And Charles de Gaulle later in the 60s famously sort of ended the gold standard because he wanted the gold back that the US was holding for France. France had it sort of mixed. They had it in the Caribbean, they had it in Africa, but eventually they did have the Polish gold go to New York. So it's just a crazy story. And the reason I tell this is that, like, just imagine like the logistics of this, like at war, ships, German U-boats all over the place, the Luftwaffe, like all sorts of things, crazy things were happening in World War II that had never happened before in the history of warfare. And you got like unmarked buses of gold leaving Poland in 1939. It makes it all the way, years later to the New York Fed. And even like, not talking about, okay, how safe is it to hold the gold in the New York Fed? Just imagine like one central banker from Poland on on a French ship, like what sort of influence is he going to have over the gold? Like, is he going to be able to protect it? What are the mechanics of that? What are the logistics of that? Of having having one central banker basically protecting the entire gold of a nation.
Yeah, that's wild.
And that's what happened. So it was the Polish gold was actually an incredible story of monetary history in World War II, and it did make it. They incredibly got it out of Poland. They got it to the U.S. But then this is another problem with the gold standard. This brings it back to Bitcoin now. Is as I mentioned in the 30s, if there was any chance that Europe was going to get back on the gold standard, that pretty much ended with Hitler. Because I think at the start of the 1930s, there was something like only 30% of the world's monetary gold in the Fed and in the US. And by the end of World War II, it was over 70%. So the US basically got all of the gold out of Europe. Not necessarily because they wanted it or anything. It's just because that's what happened. I mean, the European nations, all of them were trying to get it away from Hitler. And then it just stayed there. It stayed in the Fed, and that's what started the Bretton Woods system and the final stage of the dollar being backed by gold, which eventually, as most gold bugs and Bitcoin bugs know, ended in 1971, when de Gaulle, who was president at the time, was trying to get the gold back from the U.S. because he didn't trust the U.S. and their monetary policy. But it just goes to show, like, there's so many. Just think about all the boxes you have to check with gold to actually keep it secure. And with the story of the Polish gold, like, just, what if one admiral or one captain of some French ship just didn't agree with you, or went someplace you didn't want them to go, or their ship was sunk. There's just so many things that could have happened, and it did happen. So, like, World War II, a lot of people don't know the crazy monetary history that happened there as well. I mean, obviously it's a tragedy in so many other ways, but World War II ended any chance of, like, gold really surviving as a monetary order, specifically because most of it got concentrated in the United States. And as we all know, U.S. didn't really hold that gold standard very well, as it collapsed, less than 30 years later in 1971. So that's what brings it back. Yeah, that's what brings it back to Bitcoin. Yeah.
Well, this gives me a great appreciation for one of our sponsors, which is Vaultoro, because they've got gold and Bitcoin exchanging right instantly. So wouldn't that be helpful for the Poles back then?
Yeah, absolutely. And
I mean, think about that's such a huge difference in times. That was completely impossible back then. You know what I mean? You can just buy Bitcoin, switch it into gold, switch it back into Bitcoin, shuffle it around. And I don't know, it's just crazy how times have changed. I think that's actually a really good indication.
It is. I mean, it's there's just so many things to think about with Bitcoin security, with monetary security, and there's also other levels. When I refer to Polish gold, like, did all the Polish people really reap the benefits of that gold? Probably not. But it's just one level. This just talking about how the state, can we really trust the state with this stuff? But yeah, it's if you really just drill down and just look at some of the history about the mechanics and logistics of how you secure this stuff, it comes down to just a few people. And I think I said this on Peter's show as well. Like, the same thing happened in the Baltics. In the Baltics, they actually luckily avoided the fate of losing their gold to the Soviet Union. So the Soviet Union invaded the same time. Well, a little bit after, actually, that the Nazis invaded Poland. The Baltics, so Stalin and Hitler made a secret pact at the beginning of World War II, literally just days before he went into Poland. And Stalin said, okay, we'll take the Baltics, you take Poland, and we'll figure out, from there. Eventually, Hitler double-crossed Stalin and went back invaded Russia, which was a problem for him because he couldn't handle Russia. But anyway, the Baltics fell just like Poland fell, without a fight. There was no chance, just no chance. So the Baltics fell, and immediately all three countries, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, there was a wire or a message or a telegram, whatever, from Moscow to the Bank of International Settlements in Switzerland and to the New York Fed, because all those countries had. So remember, I said Poland had like 100 gold, a little less than 100 tons of gold. The Baltics might have had less than 10 tons each, so not much. But there was a very suspiciously similar message from each country, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. Please send all of the gold to Moscow. that message went to the Bank of International Settlements and went to the New York Fed. And, to their credit, or to their luck for the Baltics, those people on staff at the Bank of International Settlements and at the Fed, they did not honor that order. They could tell it was under duress. they could tell it was suspicious. And then obviously people knew that the Baltics were being occupied. So they did not send the gold to Moscow. And the Baltics eventually got that gold back again after the fall of the Soviet Union. So it just goes to show, like, gold has a lot of good things about it. Obviously, the classical good things that we all know and love, and we've interviewed Josh as well on our show. Definitely, it's a good service what Vaultoro does. But if you're talking about like a world monetary order, there's a lot of boxes to tick there if you really want to keep it secure. It just could come down to one person at some time, and Bitcoin is just not like that. It's completely, the security model is completely different, completely decentralized. People can truly individually take care of their money. So anyway, I think it's an interesting illustration of some of the challenges of some of the old monies.
Awesome. If people want to connect with you, we're going to put in the show notes the link to the talk, but where can they check in with you?
Our website is cryptovoices.com. Cryptovoices.com. The podcast is there as well. We're at crypto_voices on Twitter, and it's on SoundCloud and Spotify and any other podcatcher you like to use. You can find us.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks so much, Matt, for joining us this time on the Tatiana Show. The Tatiana Show comes out on Tuesdays, and you can get more episodes at thetatianashow.com. You can also check out Proof of Love at proofoflovecast.com. We recently did a cool episode with Jimmy Song, which was actually taped in Riga. We also did one with Max Kaiser and Stacey Herbert talking about their relationship. So those are actually really fun. Maybe we'll do some more of those next year in Riga. Thank you, Matt, for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Tatiana. Take care.
Hey there, it's time for the show, the Tatiana Show, where you make friends and talk life and crypto. We gotta think and reflect and use lots of intellect with our hearts when we work together. I know that it can be so hard out there, looking all around and saying that life ain't fair. So that is why we will fight and stay up late at night, listening to the Tatiana Show. Thank you for listening to The Tatiana Show. Please follow us on Twitter at Queen Tatiana or on Facebook and Instagram at Tatiana Moroz Music. More episodes can be found at thetatianashow.com, and make sure you leave a review on iTunes and tell your friends. What's the point of all this technology without a little love in our lives? Our hosts, Tatiana Moroz, Dr. Stephanie Murphy, and Lauren Kasovitz, have come together to bring you Proof of Love. Go to proofoflovecast.com. The Tatiana Show has been brought to you by CryptoMediaHub.com, a boutique marketing and PR agency for Bitcoin and beyond.